What's up, New Hope family? Welcome to the Grow Podcast. My name is David. With me, as always, is Pastor Leo. We are here to help you take a next step in your relationship with Jesus. We're so glad you're here. Hello, and welcome to episode 107. Very excited to continue our deep dive study on Romans. I still sound like this, so I apologize again. Hopefully, episode 108, I'll be back to normal. We're recording this before episode 106 goes live, so I haven't heard the feedback yet.
Right.
On if people like my voice like this or not. Mm-hmm. I'm guessing it's a no. So I apologize. But Leo, hello, welcome.
¿Cómo está, everyone?
Thank you for being here again. This is our 5th episode, just the two of us.
Yes.
We're hitting our stride now, I feel like.
Yes, we are.
Hopefully.
I think we are.
Yeah, I think so too. It's been good. It's been fun. Mm-hmm. I feel like we're learning a lot. You're a very good teacher, so I like learning from you.
Thank you.
And, I like goofing off with you as well, so that's fun.
We
used to only goof off together.
Yes.
Now we actually do some serious stuff together too. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's been good
Not
for us.
so serious, but yeah.
I feel like it's been good for the two of us.
That's true.
Around the office.
That's true.
People can trust us to maybe sit next to each other during a meeting a little more than they once could. We have proven that we can sit next to each other and at least remain focused for a few minutes at a time.
Yes.
And I think that's important.
Yes.
Because
for a bit.
Before this, we could not. If you
Not
sat by
at
me
all.
during like an all-staff meeting,
Right.
I was going to be very distracted during that all-staff meeting. And I'm guessing it was
I think Pastor
a
Mike
two-way
knew
street.
it too.
Yeah. He just had accepted it at that point. Maybe he knew, and that's why he encouraged us to be the ones on the podcast together. He was
that
like,
makes sense.
This is going to fix this problem. When they have a new lead pastor, I'm going to fix this problem for him before then. We caught you, Pastor Mike. I don't know if he listens to the Grow podcast anymore, but if so, if he does, Pastor Mike, type it in the comments, please. Mm-hmm. We haven't, every once in a while, back in the first 100 episodes of the Grow podcast, I would just pick something random that I wanted people to post in the not in the chat, in the comments about Pastor Mike. And I would usually pick like a weird old timey word, like I had one about his shirt. Michael, do you remember what word I wanted them to say? Like super keen. I think I had them say that his shirt was super keen.
Super keen.
So I would like everybody that's listening, even if you don't listen on YouTube, if you listen to the audio podcast somewhere else, go on to the YouTube for this and tell Pastor Leo something about him that you think is neato. Neato. For instance, I'm picking like your little goatee. Mm-hmm. Is that a goatee? Does it count? Michael, what's this thing down here? Is that a goatee?
Yeah, it counts as a goatee.
I didn't know. I didn't know if it had to go like down for it to be okay. I like the goatee. I think it's a good look on you.
It's the only thing that grows on my face.
I mean, I can't. Wow, we got two people that can't grow facial hair on the Grow podcast.
Oh, there we go.
I don't even know if I could get as much as what you have going though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it comes in here. I have to shave it, but it's not good. Like Michael can grow a majestic beard.
Oh, he does.
And I mean majestic. Mm-hmm. Like it's been long. He's getting real bashful over there. I wish he was on camera today. And that's gonna never be a part of my life, which I'm a little bummed about. Especially, you ever see a guy who like he's a little bit bigger, but his beard really covers up that neck fat.
Right.
I would love to have a neck fat covering beard, and that's never going to be a part of my life. Michael, would you say that that's a perk of a beard? I'm not saying you have neck fat. I'm just saying maybe at one point you have. It helps him have a chin. Oh,
there we go. See,
that's good. Michael didn't have a chin.
Mine
before
helps me have a goatee.
Right. The second week in a row, Leo, you've brought something.
Yes.
Now, last week, huge hit. Mm-hmm. Michael continued to eat after the service.
Yes.
Or the podcast. And I did as well. Mm-hmm. Lumpia.
There we go.
Lumpia. Delicious.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andy, and you. Mm-hmm. I'm a little more concerned about what you brought this week, if I'm being honest. I don't know if the camera can see what's happening here.
Once the Filipinos hear the name of it, they're gonna love it.
What is it?
It's buko pandan.
Oh, I'm not even gonna try that one. I'm gonna say something offensive. Say it again.
Buko
Boko
pandan.
pandan.
There we go.
Nailed it.
Buko pandan.
Boko pandan.
Buko is Tagalog for coconut.
Okay. All right. So this is a good start. I like coconut.
It is a good start.
All right.
And then pandan is if
Panda. So it's
No, it's-
coconut and panda.
it's a cocoa panda. No, pandan is if you're familiar with lemongrass, it's aromatic, it adds flavor. Pandan is another kind that we use, but it has a different
I'm gonna open it.
taste and aroma to it. So
I'm scared. Michael, you've opened yours. How's the smell? Okay.
there's not a lot of smell. It's coconut meat, shredded coconut meat.
Oh, it looks just terrible, Leo.
It's
Michael, can you hold yours up in front of the camera real quick? Oh, it'll be out of focus. You're right. You can focus it.
okay. It's shredded coconut meat with tapioca balls
Okay.
and the green that's
What-
green
what
jelly,
are those?
green pandan jelly,
Okay.
and then coconut jelly covering and it's cream. It's
Okay.
sweet cream.
Grab your spoon. Show me how to do it here.
Just
I'm scared of it.
grab a spoonful and then just eat.
Oh, the texture. You're not on camera. I feel like that's a perk, but Michael just dove in.
How is it, Michael? See, there we
Oh,
go.
it's so scary looking. What are the chunks?
Cheese. That's cheese. Yeah.
I'm so scared, Leo.
Oh, you'll be okay.
What if I'm not?
The Filipinos are loving it right now. See?
It smells nice.
Yes.
I will give you
like
that.
I said,
it's like
it's the pandan.
a very faint smell, but it's
Yeah.
nice.
See how his face changed? For those of you watching, see how his face
It
changed?
tastes very nice. It's terrifying to look at. This would fit
Because it's green.
this would fit. Well, it's like goopy and this looks like something that would end up on. Oh, Michael spilled and has a sad face. This looks like something that would end up on, like your grandma's. You go over to grandma's for Thanksgiving, and there's like the one dish over there where you're like, Grandma, like, is this the year? Like, did Grandma finally lose it? Like, what is that? But it's delicious.
It is,
but it looks like that. Like we had one of those growing up. That
Oh.
only my mom is the only one who still eats it. My nana would always eat it when we would have Thanksgiving with my dad's family. But I don't know if she liked it or if she was being nice to my mom because Nana
okay.
was very nice. I'm not saying it's one or the other. I have no idea. And then I can't remember if like Auntie Mary would eat it or not. But I know like at our Thanksgivings when it was like just our family, my mom would make this just horrific Jell-O concoction. Jell-O salad, she called it.
Okay.
It looked like radioactive green. It was in like a bundt cake pan, like flipped upside down. But there was like cottage cheese in it.
Oh.
And probably like snails. I have no idea what was in it. It was horrifying to look at. I hated it. This reminds me of that visually.
Yes.
Visually. But that was nice. I'm going to take another bite.
Go ahead.
I didn't get any cheese in my first bite.
The green jelly is the pandan jelly. That's
Okay.
that's where the aroma comes from.
Okay.
And then if you see a clear jelly in there, that's coconut jelly.
Okay. It's weird.
And then the small balls are tapioca balls. Shredded coconut meat.
I got one of those in my first bite, and I enjoyed it thoroughly, as I love coconut. Well, thank you, Leo.
You're
And
welcome.
Andy. Shout out to Andy. We're going to dive into Romans.
The Filipinos are having fun right now.
It's so bizarre looking, but it's pretty delicious.
See, for the Filipinos out there, add in the comments what else you want David to taste. We've already talked about balut.
As long as Michael tries it with me. But all right, so we're in Rome. We're finally to Romans 3. We're slowly getting through Romans here.
Yes.
Hold on a second. I need a sip, or I'm gonna have to cough.
It's very creamy.
If you have been with us up to this point. That's great. I hope you've read Romans 3 verses 1 through 20 today. If you haven't, you can pause this one, go back and listen to the 4 previous, because they certainly are building upon one another.
Yes, that is true.
And they're not really time sensitive either. And I think that's one thing, like where I think people have built a habit on the Grow podcast where we were almost always diving into the weekend teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe one day that's what the Grow podcast becomes again. We don't really know. But while we're in this interim period, we're just doing a deep Bible study on Romans. And so it's not the end of the world if you're a couple weeks behind,
Yes.
right? Like what you heard in the message yesterday at church, we're not touching on that today. So
Yes.
I really want to encourage you to go back if you have missed. I always suggested that anyway, because it's still great teaching, but even more so now, every week we're kind of building on what we've already talked about. So make sure that you're going back and then reading ahead with us too. So we would also encourage you to pause and just quickly read. It's 20 verses.
Yeah.
You can read 20 verses pretty quick and then rejoin us. But so kind of what we always start with, Pastor Leo, Romans 3, 1 through 20, kind of give us some main ideas or points we should be walking away with from these verses.
All right, so for Romans chapter 3, the first few verses, in a nutshell, it deals with 2 things. One, it deals with God's righteousness. Second would be man's sinfulness. God's righteousness is, remember, it's the righteousness is, we're talking about our right standing with God.
Yep.
And God's righteousness is the fact that He is perfect. So He's not just the definition of righteousness, He is righteousness. So, yeah.
One of the things that we talked about in these verses, and it's a little weird. I'm not going to go through all of them because we spent way more time on this stuff that I forgot, the coconut panda that we ate earlier.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of times in this where Paul sounds like he might be losing it a little bit, and just like having a conversation with the voices in his head. Why does it sound like that's what's happening?
Because in a sense, he is.
That's a weird move. I feel like we're there were no chapters in the original letter,
Right.
but we're a ways into the letter now, and all of a sudden I had highlighted a few of my favorites here.
Mm-hmm.
Just what then? Are we Jews any better off? No, not at all. It's just like, Paul, like, why are we all of a sudden having this weird conversation with ourselves? Why do you think he starts doing that all of a sudden?
Well, we need to remember 3 things. One, Paul haven't had a chance to teach them face-to-face at this point yet. Again, we talked about that in the previous episodes. If you haven't, go watch it. Second point is, if you remember from the previous episode, from episode 106, Paul had just finished talking about how the Jewish followers in Rome, who thought they were on the safe zone, quote unquote, because of their religious rituals and practices, were actually not in the safe zone. They were not safe just because they checked a few boxes and then that's it. And then the third one is instant text messaging, phone calls, Zoom meetings, and emails were not available yet during Paul's time. So long distance communication takes a lot of time. So days, weeks, for one way of communication like Paul's letter to get to where it's going, and then a few weeks before any response comes back. So here, what Paul is doing, he's anticipating possible objections that the Jews in Rome might have to Paul's teaching. So he just told them that they're no better than the Gentiles before God, and that they needed the gospel of God's grace, or the good news of God's grace, as much as anyone else. And that's what we talked about last week. So if you haven't listened to that, again, pause this one, go back to it. So this section of his letter is more of an FAQ,
Sure.
if you would.
Okay.
So he would ask
Frequently
himself that
asked
question.
questions.
Frequently asked
For
questions.
those of us not hip with the lingo.
There we go.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Okay.
frequently asked questions. That's very neato. So yeah, it's frequently asked questions. So just like last week, that's something that Christians today who have similar ways of thinking can learn from as well. So read it because it's very eye opening.
So there's a part in verse, I think it was in 9.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go. That caught my eye, and I don't have an answer to it, and I probably should have sent it to you so you could do like a word study in the original language or whatever. But he doesn't use. I was reading in the ESV, English Standard Version, which is a pretty literal translation.
Yes.
And it's again, to clarify, there's no magic translation that's better than the others. We've talked about that before back with Pastor Mike. But I love the ESV, especially when I'm like trying to study.
Right.
And then I know Pastor Mike would always he liked to read in multiple translations when he was studying. And I did that for this too, because in verse 9, that's when that what then part. But then after that, he says both Jews and Greeks are under sin, instead of saying Jews and Gentiles, which he uses Gentiles commonly in a lot of his letters. But again, I didn't go back and look at like the original language and on that. But I do know that the Roman culture was obsessed with Greek culture.
Right.
I mean, like obsessed. They I don't want to say worshipped it, but they did worship it. They just changed the names of the Greek gods and took their mythology on as their own. And so I'm curious, and maybe it doesn't even matter, but if he used that specifically because he's writing to the Romans, and he'll know, well, they'll want to identify, like the non-Jewish Romans are going to very much identify with that Greek part because they adore Hellenistic culture.
That is true.
So much of that Roman culture came, even though they fought, wars with the Greeks, basically ended, Greek power in the area and then conquered it. But they still just like adored it. And that just really stood out to me as I was reading that. I'm like, why wouldn't he say both Jews and Gentiles are under sin? But he specifically said Greeks. And I found that interesting.
And I think it's part of it is because of that culture. And because, again, this church, the church in Rome, is composed of Jewish believers and non-Jewish believers, a.k.a. Gentile, also known as...
Yeah.
For those who are not in the know. So, also known as Gentiles. So, they might think when Paul says the Jews and the Gentiles are under sin, that it's just them. But he's also including like the Jews and the Greeks are under sin. So, it's not just you guys, it's everybody.
Yeah.
So, it's the entire population. It's all of us. So and again, when Paul is saying these things, he's trying to be as thorough as possible because they haven't met him face to face. He hasn't taught them face to face.
Sure.
So he's trying to be as thorough as possible. Again, that's the reason for the FAQs, or the frequently asked questions sort of way of communicating this one. And he's just trying to include everybody.
Yeah. And so it seems that, seems that one of those frequently asked questions is kind of like, what's the point of being a Christian or a Jew, using the language that he's using there. But as we talked about last week, he's not talking about us actually becoming like practicing, members of the Jewish faith from that time. So we can use the term Christians as well. So what is the point? What's the advantage then that a Christian would have over a non-believer?
Okay.
Especially as we're talking about God's righteousness and man's sinfulness.
That's true. All right. So Paul explains that the Jews and us Christians as well still have some advantages, such as we have God's word. We have easy access to God's word, and sometimes that becomes a detriment because it's easily accessible. It's taken for granted, but that's beside the point. So we have access to God's word, but having access to the word of God, having access to the Bible, having access to things like this does not immediately guarantee our salvation. Again, it's not what we do. We talked about that last week. It's
check out episode 106 if you're not following along.
We went into it in detail. So it does not guarantee. Just because you have a Bible on your shelf does not mean that you're already saved. So all of us still need to have faith in God and obey His will. It's like saying again. I have a Bible. I have it on my phone. I have, like in my case, on my phone, I have 3 different kinds of Bible, just because I use it for studying.
Show off.
It does not guarantee my salvation. If you have like 3, like Pastor Mike reads multiple translations.
I have the
of
YouVersion Bible app, and that has like 30 different translations.
Yep,
So
that's right.
Does that mean I'm like super saved then?
No.
Oh man.
Unfortunately not. So it even has Tagalog. I've seen
Does it?
Yeah, it does.
That's cool.
It's awesome. But it's a little bit deeper. The Tagalog version there is a little bit deeper.
Okay.
Like a more of a KJV
Oh, okay, sure.
kind of Tagalog. But yeah, anyway, so it's having a Bible on your bookshelf doesn't guarantee your salvation, especially if you don't open it, especially if you don't even read it, especially if it's just collecting dust on your bookshelf. It's just because it's there doesn't mean that we're saved. And we have to admit to the fact that because we have received and have very easy access to God's word, there's much more knowledge and much more opportunities for us to believe and repent. But unfortunately, we also have to admit that we have so much access, it makes it very easy for all of us to take it for granted.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So Paul, this is what Paul is saying, that you have an advantage. You have an access to God's word. Everybody who does not have access to God's word, and in their time, we're talking about the Greeks. We're talking about the Gentiles who are not followers of Jesus. They don't have access to God's word. They don't have access to the scrolls that they have access to. But that does not mean that the ones who do are immediately saved.
Okay. I want to go to a question in verse 3 here. I'm just going to read verse 3. What if some were unfaithful? Does their faithlessness nullify the faithfulness of God? So let's talk about that. Let's kind of dive into what Paul says about that.
Okay, so we must understand that God will be faithful, and he's patient with us even when we are unfaithful to him. We talked about that. Like, he doesn't, the moment we sin, the moment we slip up, the moment, for example, I become angry at someone, because the Bible says when you're angry at your brother, that's equal to murder. And then just because I got angry with someone, God's going to immediately pop up in front of my face and say, "Aha, I got you."
Yeah.
No, God doesn't do that. He is patient with us. But, and this is something many people tend to forget and not think about, all of God's promises come with a condition. Like, this is my promise to you, but it comes with a condition. And many Jews and many Christians today didn't receive and continue to not receive some of God's promises because they and we broke the conditions his promises were given under. It's really hard and confusing for us to talk about it this way. The Jews then, and many of us Christians today, are, for lack of a better term, guilty of breaking those conditions. But we have to realize the truth that we are not exempted from this. None of us are. And that's what Paul has been saying for the longest time. None of you are exempted from this. We all broke God's conditions. The condition is, Jesus said it himself, be perfect because the Father is perfect. Be perfect. And the response to that actually is not, okay, can do. The response to that actually is supposed to be, but we can't. So how? So we all broke the condition, so we all need salvation. And that's what Paul is trying to say there.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the times when we screw up, this is something we get afraid of.
Right.
Like I was unfaithful, or I didn't have faithfulness towards God. Like I don't deserve his faithfulness anymore.
Right.
And so that's like a weird parallel, like, goes where you're saying like that, like yeah, there's some times where we fall outside of his promises because of something that we did, not something that he did, something that we did or didn't do.
Right.
But also, like, then what do you say to someone who says, like, well, okay, then I'm not, like, I can't, I'm not good enough. I can't, I don't deserve his faithfulness. He's not going to give it to me because I did the thing that was wrong.
And again, that we talked about that a few episodes ago. Like, we don't, and that's what many people think, that Christians are of a different level, or in a different kind of box compared to the rest of us. But that's what we're trying to say. We have to, when we talk about ourselves, we have to make ourselves relatable. We tell them that actually, even I myself am not worthy. I didn't do anything. I couldn't do anything. I can't say anything that would make me more qualified than any of us. It's the blood of Jesus. It's Jesus' sacrifice on the cross that allowed me to have a relationship with God. It's not what I did or what I said or what I'm going to do or what I'm going to say. It's not the religious organization that I swear allegiance to. It's not what kind of baptism I had. It's God. Jesus himself was the one that saved me, and that's where we all are. We are all in one box. We're all in the box of, we're all going to that place.
Yeah. And that's why Paul talks about, after he asks that question to himself and then answers himself, which another interesting thing, like the Socratic method of teaching, which was started in Greece with Socrates, but remained popular in Rome, again, because of their, I mean, it's still a thing today, but because of their love of Hellenistic culture. He's kind of using the Hellenistic method of teaching, except instead of asking them a question and letting them answer it, I don't know if anyone's ever used the Hellenistic method or the Socratic method of teaching with themselves before. So props to Paul. But, he follows it up and he says, like, even if everybody else is a liar, God's going to be true.
That's right.
He's going to be faithful to his promises, no matter how much you screw up.
Right.
His promises will remain. And so you can screw up as much as you want. You should, don't test this. But that's not the purpose. But
it's not a challenge.
He's still being faithful on his end. And that's so there's, that's why we talk, like, you can come back to him and he's still there waiting to be faithful.
That's right.
And so, the series we're going through at New Hope right now, I don't think you're using it at PH Church, but at New Hope, it's called Flannel Graph, Stories Jesus Told. And we're going through a lot of parables. I don't know if we're doing the story of the prodigal son, but that's the whole point of the parable of the prodigal son. Where this kid just does everything wrong he could possibly do wrong, burns every bridge he could possibly burn. And when he comes back, the father's just so happy that he's there. And that's the reality we have, that God's faithfulness remains no matter how unfaithful we are.
And one thing we need to clarify too is that, because I've heard this and I've heard people say this, like, just because you're a Christian now means you can just go out and unalive somebody, or just because you can go, you're a Christian now, all you need to do is say sorry. So you can sin as much as you want, just say sorry the next day, and then go and do the same thing again. Again, we talked about this last week. It's about your heart. It's not what you do. And that's where the difference comes in. It's not about how many times I say sorry. It's not about how many times I screw up. It's not about how far I can test God's faithfulness. It's about my heart. If my heart is serious about following God, then my actions change, not because I want to or because I have to or because I have some check boxes to follow, but because Jesus changes me. My relationship with Jesus changes who I am.
And then and we'll kind of end talking about righteousness, where Paul starts talking about God's righteousness, but also about our unrighteousness.
Right.
And he really hits hard on it too. And especially, this is why we want you to make sure you're with us for every episode, because this is certainly building off of where we've been in the last couple chapters. And probably chapter 10 is one of the most famous verses from the book of Romans. None is righteous, no, not one, or some version of that, depending on what version you're reading. But this is really building off of, think about if you're just reading this all together as like the church in Rome, one of these house gatherings or whatever, and you would just hit on the part about the people who were rejecting God, and then you jump into the people who think that their religious practices are making them okay, and then he comes in with this, no one is righteous, and you're like, this is a huge bummer of a letter, Paul. Thank you for hitting that up. But and then we talked about was it 3 episodes ago, I think, when we talked about how about God's righteousness and how we won't know what it is and what to do with it until we start to understand it. That's why it's important for us to understand.
You have to understand the need.
Talk to us a little bit about God's righteousness, our lack of righteousness, and what that means for us.
Okay, so Paul really goes out of his way, and we talked about just now, we had to spend a few episodes to go through it to explain one simple truth. Romans 11:13-12. Romans chapter 3 verses 11-12 says, there is no one righteous, not even one. There is no one who understands. There is no one who seeks God. All have turned away. They have together become worthless. There is no one who does good, not even one. Yay, thank you, Paul.
Cool.
Yeah. So very encouraging. But Paul uses our sinful nature to highlight God's righteousness, and that's why he's saying all of these things. He uses our nature to highlight the difference between us and God. The same way that a diamond will shine out more brightly against a black surface, and that's the reason why most, if not all, boxes with diamonds in them are dark. Because we now see the need. We now understand the need, that there is a huge gap between us and God, our nature and God's nature. It's not I'm getting closer or I'm becoming more like God. Like, there is a huge gap, and I can't bridge that. And so we know and understand God's perfect holiness and God's hate for any and all kinds of sin. We're not just talking about the big ones. We're talking about not just the serious ones, not just the heinous ones. Any and all kinds of sin. As long as it's sin, it's against the nature of God. And the biggest truth and lesson in this passage is this. Now, every single person who has ever lived is accountable to God for his actions. All of us. Again, we need to make people understand that we are no different from them. You are no different from me. I am no different from anybody. We are all accountable to God for our actions. We cannot save ourselves. We all fall short. And so we all need God.
And he stresses it in verse 19 when he's talking about how like the law speaks to everyone who's under the law, which is all of us. And then he even reiterates it still in that same verse, and the whole world may be held accountable to God. None of us are gonna sneak by on that one. Like, hey, how did you avoid being under the law there, Pastor Leo? Well, long story. I'll tell you about it
That's
sometime.
true.
Like, none of us are gonna get out of that.
And we talked about that last week too. Like, even for those who consider themselves as religious, it doesn't following traditions and practices are good, but if your heart is not in it, it still doesn't allow you to squeeze by and get in front of everyone else.
Yeah, and I'm just going to keep reading because Paul's pretty smart. You're pretty smart, Leo.
Right.
Paul's pretty. Verse 20, for by works of the law, no human being will be justified in his sight.
That's right.
Like, it's just there's no maybe that's not what Paul meant, and he's being so clear to us that we are not capable, no matter what we do, of matching God's righteousness, which is
sobering.
Yeah, it really is.
But it's eye-opening as well.
Sure.
And again, it shows us the need. Again, we talked about it when we started doing this. We have to understand the need so that we will understand why we need Jesus, why we need God.
Yeah, that, like you said, it highlights our lack of righteousness, highlights God's righteousness, and that gap between the two really highlights the need that you're talking about.
That is true. All right, so here are the changes that need to happen in us from this passage. We talked about this briefly before. There's a head change, there's a heart change, and there's a life change. The head change is we need to know that only God's transforming grace can create righteousness and can create righteous hearts that love obedience to God. There's nothing that we can do that would make us more righteous and that would make us love God more. We need to know that it's only God's transforming grace that can do that. In our hearts, we need to feel confident. That we need to have the confidence that God can and will, if we let Him. It's only if we let Him produce an obedient heart in us. Again, it's talking about the heart because God looks at our heart. And in our life, we need to trust that faith in the gospel puts us in a right standing with God. It's not our religious obedience. It's not about the traditions. It's not about the practices. It's not about the organization. It's not about the pastor. It's not about what kind of music you listen to. It's our faith in the gospel that puts us in a right standing with God.
A question for you before we wrap up. That I didn't prep you for at all, but okay. So you talked about heart change. The only way to have that obedient heart is to let God change us, right?
Right. So,
okay, this coming Sunday, somebody that joins us on the Grow podcast every week, they're headed to church and they just don't want to be there. They don't feel like being there. What should that person do? Like, should I not go to church in that moment? Because we talk about like me going to church, right? If my heart isn't in the right place, doesn't mean anything, right? Or me singing a worship song on Sunday,
right?
So I go to church, and then we have this incredible worship team. You guys have an incredible worship team at PH Church, and the worship team goes up there, and we start singing a song, and I'm just singing along, and my heart's not there. But I'm a good Grow podcast listener, so I listened to Pastor Leo, and I'm like, I need to have this heart change, but I'm not there yet. What do I do? Like, do I not sing along because it doesn't mean anything, so it's wrong for me to do it? Do I not go to church until I feel like going to church? What should I do in that situation where, okay, I know my heart needs to be behind these actions because it's the only thing that matters,
right?
And it's not right now,
right?
What do I do in that moment to get there?
Put it this way: when you know that you're sick, running away from the medicine is not going to make you feel better. So it's when your heart is not in it. That's okay. That's a fact, and things like that happen. Like even for me, when I'm doing something, like for example, when I'm praying, sometimes my heart is not in it. When I'm worshiping, sometimes my heart is not in it. Whether it's because I'm very preoccupied at that moment, or I just had a big fight with my wife, for example, or something like that. My heart is not in it, but that does not mean that just because my heart is not in it, I'm not going to do it anymore. Do it and keep asking the Holy Spirit, because it's only through the power of the Holy Spirit that lives can be transformed. And keep asking the Holy Spirit to open your heart. And if you're willing, and again, it's the heart. If your heart is willing, even if your heart is not in it yet, if your heart is willing, and if your heart is open to the transforming power of the Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit can and will work in you.
And I think there's a huge difference between a person who is just showing up there and checking the box and getting it over with, and a person who's just showing up and they just feel like their heart isn't in it, but they're aware of that, and they're like you said, they're asking the Holy Spirit to help them with that. Well, that person has like you using your analogy, they've seen the illness they have, and they're asking the Holy Spirit for the correct medicine because they don't have it themselves, as opposed to the person who is just there pretending that they don't have the sickness because they want everybody to think that they're healthy. That's a huge difference, and that's a huge difference. That's a very healthy place to be in.
Yes,
as because like you just said yourself, you're a pastor, and a lot of times, I grew up with a pastor as a dad, so I maybe had a little more of a understanding of, like, pastors aren't automatically perfect all the time, although my dad was pretty obnoxiously close, but definitely not perfect. But so even as a pastor, sometimes you're not there, and you realize like I need the Holy Spirit to help me get to the point where my heart is lining up with my actions, because that's what's the most important thing. So don't beat yourself up because you don't feel like going to church one day, or I don't feel like going to small group tonight, or my heart's not really in this worship right now. As long as you're recognizing that and then asking the Holy Spirit to help us. Thank you, Pastor.
Again, you recognize it and you're doing something about it.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between I recognize it, I know it, so I'm not just going to do it. So.
Yeah. Did I cut you off before you got to life change? I can't remember.
Oh, no, it's fine. We got through life change already.
I couldn't remember if I let you finish or
but
not.
the next steps, though, steps for them would be to read Romans chapter 3.
Finish it up.
And it's just 10.
This is an easy one.
Yeah. 10 verses.
10 verses.
21 to 31.
Knock them out.
Yep. Knock them out.
Great. It's actually 11 verses. It's 11 verses.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it is.
It is 11 verses. It's one of those weird math things where it looks like it's 10, 21 to 31, but
11 verses.
Actually, it's
but
11.
It's just one verse more than 10.
Yeah, one verse more than Pastor Leo said, you guys will be fine. Thank you, Pastor Leo, for your teaching. Yeah, make sure you're reading along with us each week. Thank you to clarify, the only reason I didn't eat more of this is because we were doing a podcast. Right. I'm going to eat more now.
Andy,
Michael has polished his off.
Oh, yeah, he did.
This is very impressive. Maybe there's a couple of little pieces left, but thank you for that, Andy and Pastor Leo. And thanks to all of you for being here with us. We love you, New Hope family. We're so glad that you've taken this next step with us on the Grow Podcast. You're studying Romans with us. Let's make sure that we're being intentional about what we're learning, and not just, like we've been talking about, going through the motions, checking the box. Okay, I listened to the Grow Podcast this week. I can tell Leo on Sunday that I listened, but we're being intentional. So last week we were asking the why. This week we've got the head change, heart change, and life change that we talked about. And then make sure you're read Romans, those 11 verses before next week.
Yes.
We love you, New Hope family. We're so glad that you joined us today, and we will see you next time.
Ingat.